And do you guys know how he sold the first game?
Mm-mm.
So he met Sid Meier and they started working on the first title. And what Wild Bill did for a few weeks was he would call computer stores around the US and ask for the title if they had the title in stock. So no one had, of course, because Microprose hadn't sold the title yet to those companies. And a few weeks later, he would call the same stores and tell them that they had this game to sell. And the store started to buy the games because they thought there were guys looking for the
man.
games. This is old time. Remember, this everything
Pretty
goes
great.
in the old days.
That's fantastic.
Welcome to the Air Combat Simulation Podcast, brought to you by BVR Productions. Together with content creators, mission builders, experts, and enthusiasts, we explore the comprehensive world of combat aircraft simulation.
Everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Air Combat Sim Podcast. Today we are joined by Sérgio from Microprose, and hopefully we can get some questions asked by the community answered, and see what he has to say and see what Microprose has been up to and what their plans are for the future. So welcome, Sérgio. How are you doing?
Hey, thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm fine, thank you. And you guys?
I'm doing well. I really appreciate you spending the time to come talk to us. It's really awesome.
Yeah, sure thing. My pleasure.
Today we're also joined by we got Sport. How you doing, Sport?
Very well, thank you. Appreciate you having me back on.
Sure thing. And we got Red Kite. How's it going, Red Kite?
Hey guys, yeah, I'm reasonably good. I'm starting to be hit by hay fever, so that's no fun. But yeah, I'm good.
Oh, the seasonals. Not my favorite time of year either. We also have Max Waldorf. How's it going, Max?
Fine, thank you. I'm happy to be back, and especially for this episode with an epic name like this one.
I'm sure you've been chomping at the bit for a while.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
We also have Goat. How's it going, Goat?
Doing well.
Good. And we have Baltic Dragon. Hey, Baltic. How's it going?
Hey, it's all good, thanks. Glad to be here again.
Awesome. So yeah, let's just we'll just jump right into this one. I know everybody's anxious to ask the questions they want to ask and whatnot, but Sérgio, what brought Microprose back into the game? What kind of pushed you guys to say, hey, let's start doing this again?
Yeah, well, this actually started about 20 years ago when David Lagety, the current CEO of Microprose, started to wonder what was it that happened to the company and started investigating and trying to dig in to find out what happened to the brand and to the company itself and to the IPs that it had. And after almost 20 years, I wouldn't say it's 20 years, but almost 20 years, because the process has begun quite earlier than 2020, David decided to purchase the actual brand, start tracking the IPs, and just bring the company back. Now, one thing that you guys need, that I would like you guys to understand, is that David is a gamer like us, right? He has a lot of memories from Microprose. He loves Microprose. He is really into getting all that nostalgia and all that feeling that Microprose gave us when we were kids, when we were younger. And in the process, he meanwhile met and talked to Bill Steele, one of the co-founders of Microprose, along with Sid Meier. And Bill Steele has been helping him since then. So basically what brought Microprose back from, I wouldn't say from the dead, but from the limbo it was at. It was pretty much the love for the brand and the love for those games that Microprose did so well back in the...
That's awesome. It's good to hear that he's also a gamer.
Oh, yeah.
Good things come from that, usually.
I was wondering, do you still have Miss Microprose, the T-28 aircraft that Steele used to own? I'm not sure if he still does or not.
I have no idea. I don't.
That's a shame, because it snuck into a couple of the games over the years. Like it's in Fleet Defender, I believe.
Yeah, I really don't know. I cannot answer it.
Fair enough. So you guys made the announcement recently of 3 new games under your brand that you're going to bring out. We had Second Front, which looked like it was like a turn-based tactical World War II game. Is that right?
Yep, it is.
And then there was Sea Power, which is it the same developer as oh shoot, the name's skipping out on me now. Cold Waters?
No, it's not. No, it's not. It's from one of the guys that used Cold Waters. It's not.
Oh, I
It's not.
see.
Yeah, it's not the same.
Okay, and that's just kind of like a naval combat. Again, probably strategic.
Yeah, it's a naval combat simulator, strategic and RTS. It's actually quite funny because as I was talking to David Lagety about the games, and we were talking about other title, this Task Force Admiral. I was thinking that it would be really cool if we had some Cold War naval simulator. It's something that I was sure that a lot of the guys from my generation would like to get their hands into. And a couple of days after that, David just told me that they had signed with these guys that were doing this naval strategic game that was passed in the Cold War. So it was kind of fun that happened, and I'm really glad that it did, because I think a lot of the guys out there will love the game, will love the theme. It's something that we grew up with. It's something that for sure will make a lot of players happy.
Yeah, I agree. Actually, I'm looking forward to that one. Just the screenshots, they look pretty amazing,
Oh
and
yeah.
everybody loves a good tactical war game anyway.
Yeah.
At least in this genre, most people do.
Yeah. It's
And
it's not that there's a lack of games out there, but I think that with this depth, with the ideas that these guys are putting into the game, dedication and the passion, so I think it's all there.
Yeah, I agree. And then the third one was Task Force Admiral.
Yeah.
Now that one's a little bit different. Is it still kind of a naval strategy game, or?
It is. It's almost the same kind as Sea Power, but instead of being on the Cold War, it's a World War II game. It has some differences from Sea Power. You will be able to do different playability. Gameplay is a bit different as well. So it's not the same game, but they are basically they are the same genre. They are in the same genre. It's just which I also enjoy. I'm a World War II aficionado. I love those old warbirds and those very old ships, and those times back in World War II were very tough. And one of the things that the guys are doing is going to bring this extra layer of depth to the game, because if you launch your aircraft to do some scouting or an attack or something, tell them to keep to keep radio silence, you will not know where the aircraft are, right? So it's a bit it's very different when you compare with Sea Power, in the sense that Sea Power eventually has a lot of different systems and detection systems and a lot of very modern machinery, which allows you to have a better perception of the world around you and what's going on the battlefield. Task Force Admiral is quite the opposite. If you are not careful, you can lose a lot of your aircraft just by the sheer fact that you cannot communicate with them, and you are not on the place, on your carriers are not on the place that they are expecting them to be. The fuel will eventually run out, and they will eventually have to bring their planes to the ocean or try to crash on an island or something like that. So although they are in the same genre, they present very different and very cool challenges for the players. So I think that if you are a fan of the genre, it's not a matter of choosing one or the other. I personally will play both just because of that, because they have completely different challenges, and I love both.
That sounds awesome. The Sea Power one intrigues me a bit more. I like a bit more of the modern stuff. But Task Force Admiral, I think I watched a video from Mags. That one looks really cool. Also,
it's a great video. I love watching that.
Oh yeah, we should get him on the show. I just thought of that. And then just a few days ago, big announcement, and I believe the Second Front, Sea Power, and Task Force Admiral, those were all, you're just publishing those games. You guys aren't the actual developers.
Yeah, we're not developing them. We're just publishing them. There
Gotcha.
are 3 different companies developing them.
Gotcha. And then just a couple days ago, you guys came and said you're making this new one called the Mighty 8.
Yeah.
And that one's under your guys's name?
Yeah, that's ours. That's an internal development. It's the first Microprose title that we are now.
That's awesome. Actually, and this is a VR first game where the focus is co-op play.
It's not the focus. The player will be able to play a campaign.
Okay.
We're planning at something like the regular 25 minutes with a backstory. Let me just start by saying that we want the Mighty the Eighth to be not to be just a game, but to be more of an experience. We want the player to be in the middle of a very rich story, very rich environment, and puts in a position where everything he does has an outcome and it makes a difference. Right. So it's not just about flying the B-17 or being inside the B-17. It's experiencing the B-17 and those times, those very troubled times. So, for example, one of the things that we have on the announcement, if you read it, it's the fact that you will be able to do some repairs. For example, if something happens to the airplane, and you can do those repairs, like, for example, a snapped cable, an engine on fire, or something like that. Right. So it's not just about getting into the aircraft, shooting some aircraft that are trying to shoot you back. It's a bit more. It's living the experience of a crew member. And like you said, it is a VR first, but it's not a VR only. It's not a VR exclusive title. It's we want people to experience VR and get into the game in VR. But of course, we cannot forget those that are not using VR or don't want to use VR at all. Right, so it's an experience for everyone. But you do have the single player campaign that you are going to play if you want to. Obviously, I think most players will. And you do have the co-op part in which you can play with up to 9 other guys, 9 other friends, and be part of the crew that's flying that aircraft, that B-17 or the P-24, and doing those missions.
That sounds amazing. And we also have Sport with us here. And Sport, you have flown the B-17 as part of the Collins Foundation, right?
That's correct. I have about 100 hours of flight time in the B-17 and about 20 hours of flight time in the B-24. So when I heard this was coming out and was going to be a VR experience, obviously I got incredibly excited. So it's good to meet you and happy to see the work you guys are doing. What stage of the war is this going to sort of cover? Are these going to be late model aircraft? Are they going to be sort of mid-war, that sort of 1943 to 1944, where 25 missions was a significant milestone, or was it going to be later, like the G models in 1944 and 45?
I think we're aiming more at the middle. At the fact that that milestone, that 25 mission, milestone was actually big. We are still working on the story. Like I said, we want this to be a very rich game in terms of story and background. And we do have the story written, but we are tweaking and trying to find what makes more sense in regards with what we can get the player to experience. I personally believe that the 25 mission mark, it's something that gets the player. Of course, that we can have pretty much all the objectives that we wanted to put in the game, right? But I think that the 25 mission mark, it's a classic. It's something that pretty much all the fans or everyone that knows about World War II and these bombers and these crews knows about. And it was somewhat of it was quite an achievement, right? It was quite an achievement. So I think that this is important. We will probably center the story around that era.
So from a full fidelity standpoint, well, first of all, are the aircraft is the simulation of this event going to be full fidelity, where every crew station will have realistic controls and interaction? And will players be given the opportunity to fly a complete, multi-hour mission, or will this be broken down into story segments along a different sections of a mission?
That's a tricky question. That's actually a tricky question, and we are still making a lot of decisions in terms of game design and what works for the player. in terms of realism, let me start by that. In terms of realism of controls and what's going on with the aircraft and how the aircraft behaves and flight dynamics and whatnot, I would not expect a full realism in terms of you have to spend this amount of time to get the B-17 to start, et cetera, et cetera. We want to make it, like I said, we want to make it an experience, but an experience that it's accessible to everyone. I'm not saying that we are completely discarding the fact that you will be able to start up the B-17 from scratch, but if we do that, we'll have to offer a way for people to start with the engines on or to have some sort of auto start or something like that. Everything else that goes around you, we want to make it as realistic as possible in terms of ballistic, in terms of physics, in terms of flight dynamics. Even if we don't get all the switches to work exactly as they were, and again, I'm not saying that we won't. I'm saying that even if we don't do that, we want the aircraft to behave realistically in the air, and we want you to feel that you are flying through a mass of air and you are flying a very heavy aircraft, and that after you drop your bombs, you feel the difference in the weight. And when the aircraft is, portion of the aircraft disappears, a bit of the wing or the rudder or the fuselage or something, that, you can feel those effects. So in that term, in terms of the actual physics and flight dynamics, we want to give you something that's as realistic as possible without having to make you an actual B-17 pilot. Okay, I'm not saying we're not going to do that. I'm saying that we need to cater for as many people as possible, because this is not an actual flight simulator, like, for example, other simulators that are there, like DCS and Explainer or not. This is a game about you being a crew member of B-17 or a B-24. Right?
And that's a really, I think you make an incredibly valid point there, and it's an important distinction that it's easy to lose sight of the gameplay factor in the pursuit of ultimate realism. You need to make it fun as well, and you need to, like you said, you need to make it accessible. So I totally respect that, and I think that's going to be something that everybody can look forward to.
Yeah, it's something that we want to do at Microprose, right? Like I was saying in the beginning of the interview, David is a gamer, and he loves games, and he loves what Microprose did back in the old days. And what we loved with Microprose was not just the fact that Microprose did some realistic flight simulators or whatnot. It was the fact that it involved you in the story and evolved you in the game. And that's our goal. We don't want to just do a flight simulator that as realistic as it is. And let me just say this, up front, I'm a simmer. Okay, most of my background has to do with flight sim. So I'm a simmer. So I use several sims. So I know what goes behind the passion of simming, of flight simming. But the fact is that, and this is something that I have personally felt for a long, long time, as much as flight simulators have evolved technically, this is just my personal opinion, but it kind of feels soulless to me. It's just, you can do missions in DCS and whatnot, but the thing is, I feel like I'm just thrown into the scene and push all those buttons and pull all those levers and do all, and learn all those systems. But I kind of feel lost in the middle of so much thing to do to control the aircraft, but I'm not engaged in the story. And this is something that we at Microprose want to change, right? We want to engage the user into the story. We want to make all sorts of games. We want to make them fun. We want to make them accessible to everyone. When I say accessible to everyone, it's actually accessible to everyone. I'm not discarding the guys that like realistic. I don't like the expression, but I use it with quotes so that you can understand. A study level sim, okay? But we also want we want to be able to offer something to the guys that are not into study level sims, but they just want to live the story and feel like they are part of something that in what they do makes a difference in the story that they are living. That's what we are trying to do with Microprose. And that's a lot of what we want to do with this, with the Mighty 8th, which is quite a title. It's a classic. It's something that everyone knows, everyone loves. So we have to do this right, but we don't want to just make it right. We want to make it very special, right? So this has to go beyond just being the technical part or the technical things of having this base 17 or B24 or whatever with a lot of buttons, and I can do a startup and I can get in the air, and then nothing. You do the mission, but you don't feel like you're part of something. We want you to feel like you're part of. We want you to feel like you're part of. That is very important, and that is what we want to do. That's what we want.
If I may chime in, just defending DCS a little bit and story-driven campaigns, because that's what I'm doing there. I think you can achieve that, but I could totally agree and understand the desire to make it as kind of entertaining and as immersive as possible from your side. So the question here I would like to ask, in a campaign that you'll have, obviously you'll be able to swap between different roles and different places on the plane, right? Or is it possible to just play from the pilot's point of view for the whole thing, or from the gunner, whatever? How would that work?
Yeah, you'll be able to. You will live the story, and you'll live the story as a character, but you'll be able to play inside the aircraft. You'll be able to switch between the different. You can be the pilot, you can be the tail gunner, you can be the navigator, whatever works for you. The thing is, despite you are living the story of that character, you're living the story of that character also through the crew, which is part of you doing the missions and getting back alive and getting back to our family, right? So you'll be able to do that. Let me just add something, or just comment on something that you said in the beginning. You were saying that you were defending DCS. I'm not attacking DCS or any other sim. Okay, I'm not. I'm just. When I mentioned DCS and other sims, I play those sims. I was just saying that I feel that nowadays there's not enough soul for me personally on those sims, and I crave for a bit more. Again, personally.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting point, because I think there's a spectrum, right? In that when you look at sims today, or you look at aviation programs, I mean, DCS, for example, my brother-in-law would never be able to get to him. Starting it up is a waste of time. He wants to be in the middle of the action altogether. And so I wouldn't say that. I think it's interesting. I think you bring up a good point that along the spectrum, there is that study sim, if that's legit, and then I think and then there's also the narrative that you want to follow around. And just like Baltic was saying, he's working right now on a campaign to actually bring Raven 1 into DCS, which is going to be great. But I think to your point, the average simmer may really enjoy those little detail pieces, but for the most part, there really isn't a storyline to follow or play along with just by itself.
Yeah, I think that is lacking. One of the things that people still talk about when they talk about great examples of sims is the fact that Falcon 4 had a dynamic campaign. So you felt, although it wasn't a story, per se, it wasn't something that was written, and you felt like you were part of this story written by someone. You felt like you were part of something that was alive and going on, right? I know of guys that they didn't turn the computers off when they were going to bed, because they wanted the dynamic campaign to continue going on in their computers. So he felt like he was actually part of this campaign, of this war, of this battlefield, in which things would unfold during the night as he was asleep. And as he woke up and went to check what was happening, suddenly he could have lost some bases. The front line was completely different. Some squadrons were lost. A lot of things would have happened during the night, and he felt like he was part of it. And people still talk about this dynamic campaign, and that felt they were inside that campaign and felt that they were inside that game.
No, I completely agree, and I hear you. It's just I felt compelled to kind of come forward. But my point is that, of course, if you create, if you want to create a good storyline and you wrap the game around it, it will be completely different than if you try to create a storyline for a game that's already there. So that's the difference. Of course, you'll be able to do a much more immersive and better campaign or game, because the whole issue there, or whole point, is to make it like that. And then you will wrap the other things around the storyline, if that makes sense. Whereas in DCS, it's the other way around.
Yeah, I think that you're on to exactly what I'm thinking, Baltic, is that DCS is kind of a sandbox, and you can play it as a sandbox. and you can kind of make it what you want it to do. And in your case, you make these awesome missions and campaigns, and people can purchase them and use them and fly them, and it feels a lot less lifeless than just the DCS sandbox or throwing up a couple targets to hit and going and shooting them. But to Sergio's point and to Microprose's point, it's about making a game around a story versus adapting a story to a sandbox, or at least that's my interpretation of it.
So if I can jump in and ask a follow-up question to that, I'm curious, with your development of the game and the story and this immersive experience all being tied into one, what sort of research are you guys doing to create this story? Are you finding data on actual real life people that served missions and have mission logs and things like that? Where are you getting a lot of this research and ideas from to be able to create this experience for the player?
I asked myself that same question when I first heard about them, and excuse me. And of course, I asked David about it myself. Ask him, look, how is it that we're going to do this? Where are you going to get all this data? And David just started telling me about this amazing amount of material that he has access, and he even owns some of the things that were sold and whatnot. And he has files for mission diaries from guys that were in his aircraft, and a lot of photographs and pieces of newspaper, and the amount of information that David has. And he sent me a few pictures. It's just unbelievable and overwhelming. He has so much stuff that's as he was telling me about the things that he had access to and the material that he has, I got goosebumps, right? Because it was just uncanny. It was unbelievable to see everything that he got his hands on and everything that he managed to get info about, which is obviously going to be used to create this backstory and to create everything. A lot of we are probably going to use some of that material as scan it or photograph it or whatnot or whatever, and use it as bits of art to use inside it. It's just it's unbelievable. It's unbelievable. I wasn't expecting. I was expecting some research to be done, but at this level. And of course, we are also talking to people that had relatives back in the days, or folks that work on B-17, restoring B-17s and whatnot, to get some more information and some more imagery and whatnot. We have a lot of data. We have a lot of information. I was just overwhelmed when David told me what we have.
Sorry again. Some time ago, I'd read a book by the name of Combat Crew by John Comer, which was an account for 25 missions over Europe as a B-17 crew. And something that's, I suppose, surprised me a bit is how much the bombers got characterized. They have the nose art and they all have their own quirks. But how it became a sort of a home and a place of safety within the combat. And how in one case, they had the crew were toward the end of their career, their tour, and they got a bit cocky, and they decided they would paint some red engine cowlings onto their aircraft, which they very thoroughly regretted after the one flight with the engines painted. Is the aircraft going to be characterized? Are we going to see quirks and customization or problems, issues with the aircraft mechanical things that are renowned for that particular aircraft and part of your story?
Yeah, that's something I don't have information about. I don't have all the documents for the. That's something I cannot at this moment. I cannot.
That's a shame. But is it something you personally would like to see explored?
Oh yeah, I would. Yeah, I think, like I said, it's a big part of what characterized the crews and the actual bombers. It's something that I would personally like to see. There's a lot of the things in the game that we are still working on, experiment, and trying to realize if it. I don't have all the documentation and I don't have all the answers, so I cannot answer to that particular question right now. Hopefully I can say something in a few weeks or a few.
Yeah, no worries. It's being in early stages of development, it can be quite difficult to avoid things like feature creep and deciding what it is you're going to do.
Everything can change.
Yeah.
I think it's a great point, though, Red Kite, because having spoken to a lot of these veterans, they echo that exact sentiment. Having a relationship with the aircraft, having a relationship with each other, with the ground crews, and how intimate it was. Like you said, with all the documentation out there, but a lot of these veterans are sadly passing away. I mean, most of them are deep into their 90s, the survivors, and finding firsthand accounts is harder and harder. So I think this is also going to be a very good homage to at least what we call here in America as the greatest generation, but to the veterans of World War II that flew missions from bases in England over Europe, during an incredibly hard time in world history. So I'm looking forward to seeing how that's conveyed.
I think to the point of being able to customize the appearance of your aircraft, it's also one of those hit and miss things like full sim and game story playability, where there's probably a handful of people who want to do it, and there's another handful that just slap something on and want to get into the story. So that's got to be just a fine line to walk all the time from almost every aspect, I'd imagine, of developing a game like this.
Yeah, but you also need to. That's something that we need to remember, is that people are going to play it multiplayer as well. Right? From what I understand from the game design, multiplayer is not exactly. It's not directly or may not be directly related to the actual campaign. So you'll be able to play some missions even if they are not part of the campaign. Right? And by doing this, you'll probably want to have together your own crew, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, like I said, up to 9 other guys, and fly those missions. And you will want to customize your B-17. That's something that you want to do. So even if you don't do it story-wise, and perhaps for me personally, I don't think it would make sense to have the B-17 customized or change from anything that is going to come in the game with those colors and the paintings on the nose and etc. Because we're talking about that particular B-17 for particular story, but I think it would make sense for me to be able to customize it for the multiplayer, and for me to be able to take some screenshots and share it with guys on Facebook. Talk a bit about the stories that I'm living with my fellow crew members. So I think in that sense, it does make sense.
Yeah, I agree. On that note of having a multiplayer experience where, as you said, I mean, obviously you probably haven't figured everything out yet, but if you have a couple of missions to play in multiplayer that aren't the campaign, has there been any thought of having a singular dynamic mission, not a campaign, not a dynamic campaign that's like Falcon, but a randomly generated mission every time you play? That way, multiplayer doesn't get stale. Because I'd imagine if you get some of your friends together and, okay, we've played all 5 or 10 or however many missions there are, now we're never going to play it again. I'd imagine you'd want some experience like that.
We have some. I know what we want to do. I cannot tell you anything right now, but we do have some ideas regarding.
Circling back a bit to, and I guess this kind of just goes hand in hand with having some sort of dynamicness to it. You had mentioned, guys, that you would leave Falcon running for overnight, and then they'd wake up in the morning. Well, I myself do that. And I know that Max Waldorf also does the same. He plays
24/7.
Yeah, a 24/7 server.
There you go, guys. Yeah, There you go. I know of two more guys now.
Yep.
Yeah.
Did you have anything on that front, Max?
Yeah,
idea.
I have a question though, because it's funny. Falcon 4, when you look at your homepage, basically is the title that you see that is basically showcased as I would say maybe the final piece of art of Microprose. I would say before you were reborn from your ashes like the phoenix. Given the history behind Microprose and the fact that we have sim titles such as Falcon 4 that has been having an active community for more than 20 years behind it, so there's a huge history behind it. What would be your key takeaways about what you would keep as the spirit of what was or will become again Microprose, and what you want to avoid? Because let's face it, there were mistakes that were done in the past, especially probably Falcon 4 was probably the best, as we say, chef-d'oeuvre, but also was probably the end of it. So it was probably something that has maybe in the spirit of people a bit of mixed feeling. But today, with the new team, with everything that you're developing, what would be the spirit of the old Microprose that you would take with you, and the thing that you will leave behind?
That's an interesting question, and a hard one for me to answer as well, because most of my memories regarding Microprose, and I was not with Microprose in the old days. I was a gamer. I was not with the company. Most of my, if not all my memories regarding Microprose are actually good memories. But one of the things that I would take away, and one of the things that we want to do nowadays, to capture that spirit that we were doing games for. I mentioned it before. I'm just repeating myself, but Microprose made games for everyone, and they made several types of. They made strategy games, they made action games, they made simulation games, and that's something that Microprose wants to do once again. We are Microprose. The company wants to have a place, mostly warfare games or warfare related games in its majority of the titles that we are doing, or we are developing, or we are signing with developers to produce. But we want to be able to reach out to several types of gamers, several genres, several types of levels of playing, from the guy that again wants to have the full fidelity sim to the guy that just wants to get into the action. And what I would take, the good thing on Microprose, I think that it would be it to be a brand that provided amazing experience for a broad spectrum of gamers. What I would like for Microprose not to do, I would like Microprose not to be sold to another company again and then just put on the shelf. That's the worst. That's the worst memory I have from Microprose, was Microprose disappearing. That's what I don't want to happen, pretty much. Other than that, I just want Microprose to make great games.
Yeah, I would say for myself, I knew I grew up with the Microprose game, and it certainly fueled my passion for military aviation. So I know for me, I'm excited to see them coming back into the fold, and welcome them, and look forward to seeing what you guys have to offer and are coming up. Are there, Mighty Eighth looks fantastic. Are there other games that you guys have in the queue, or pondering, or thinking, or anything else you can share with us?
In terms of titles, I cannot share anything else. The titles that we already announced,
Yep.
but I can tell you that we have a long queue. We have a long list of games that we are going to announce throughout the next few months. Some of them may be related to titles that Microprose had in the past. A lot of them are new titles. We are still trying to get some IPs back. As you know, the Microprose IPs are scattered, between several companies, and we are trying to get some of the IPs. But we do have a list of games. I can tell you we have a double-digit list of games to announce throughout the next few months.
Wow, that's awesome. So we can expect another Falcon game then. I'm kidding. I know you
I
can't.
was asking if you were intending to rebuy the license from Falcon, but
We usually say that all options are on the table right now. All options for not only titles but also platforms. People ask us a lot if we're releasing games for Linux or for Macs or for consoles. All options are on the table. If it makes sense for Microprose, and if it makes sense for the community, and if it's something that it will benefit the community and the company, of course, because we have to make money, right? It's the only way we can survive as a company. I know people hate to talk about money. I don't like to talk about money, but if the truth is that we need to sell those titles, we need to get those titles out so that we can make more titles and can give you more games, or just give you other versions, new versions, better versions, or DLCs, and everything that we want. So if it makes sense, we will probably do it. If it doesn't make sense, yeah, we'll probably just don't.
Are you guys looking at, or it would be a single purchase for your software? Or are you looking at subscription models, or is there any kind of broader discussion on on the money, to your point?
Oh, yeah. I've been, as you guys know, I'm the community manager, but I'm not just a community manager for Microprose. I also deal with other things inside the company, and I talk with David a lot, and we exchange ideas a lot. We have talked about several aspects of how we could get people to purchase Microprose games. And the thing that we are doing right now, we're talking about one-time purchase. Okay, you are getting the game, you purchase the game is yours. Well, it's not
Gotcha.
yours, there are licenses, okay, but you are purchasing the game, and that's the model that we are following right now. We may have some other models in the future. Right now, at this time, I don't foresee any title that will be subscription based. Okay, I don't remember of anything right now that we have on the table that will have you pay for a subscription.
Gotcha.
What-
Well, and won't hold you to it. Things change, but I was just curious if you guys had thought through that to any extent. But all good.
We have thought that there have been discussions with the team regarding have some sort of subscription to acquire, having like a pass to acquire games, but that will force us to do something else. So we have, like I said, we have all options open. We're just looking at what makes sense to us. But like I said, right now we don't have any subscription type or anything like that to get out.
Let's skip back to the Mighty Eight. I actually had a couple questions I jotted down. I wanted to know how far are you in the process of developing the game? Are you guys still at a conceptual point? Do you guys have a demo that you work with internally to explore ideas? Like, just how far along do you guys see yourselves?
Yeah. We have some internal demos that we are using to, like I said, explore something. This is we're still a bit far off from really. And honestly, inside Microprose, I was the one pushing it to say something to the community, because I felt like we owe it to the community to say something. If you were paying attention for the past few months, we were releasing some screenshots, some renders of parts of the B17, and people were asking about the project, and they were asking about what was it that we were doing. And then we announced 3 titles that had nothing to do with the B17. And I tried to push this, and I said, look, I know that we're still in this early development of the game. I know that we're still a bit far away from release, but I think we need to say something to the community. I think that we need to let them know what is it that we are doing, because these guys we have teased them for so much, for so long. I'm sorry, we teased them for so long showing these images. And when we actually do an announcement, we are announcing 3 games that are not and they have nothing to do with the B17, except one of them being a World War II game. So we are the B17, the Mighty 8. It's not going to be released for some time. Okay, that's you guys will have to wait. We are working on it. Like I said, we have internal demos, and we're working on things internally. A lot of the things are working already, but yeah, it's still going to take a while until it's
Sure, that's fine. Like, we appreciate you guys letting us know, and obviously, it sounds like you guys are taking it seriously, and it sounds like you guys are trying to explore every angle to make the most of the game and give everybody something that they enjoy. So that's really cool to hear.
Yeah, that's the goal. Yeah.
So speaking of the screenshots that you guys released, I do remember the B17. I think there was one in there though that was a tank.
Yeah.
Is that from this game, or is that something that hasn't been?
That's something that hasn't been announced. Yes.
Oh, okay.
It's one of the titles on that double-digit list that I do about.
Gotcha. Well, anybody else have anything they want to ask before we wrap things up? We're getting pretty close to an hour here. I think we answered fairly anything, pretty much everything that was asked by the community. I guess the only other question is that you guys plan to release physical products or just digital downloads? That was one of the community questions. Apparently, one of our members likes to collect non-digital goods.
Yeah, that is something that we'd like to do. Yes.
Oh, okay.
We would like to do some physical release of games, some special editions. I'm not saying we will. That's something that we would like to do, that we have talked about, but I cannot promise you anything or say that we will.
Gotcha.
It has been, we have spoken about it. Yeah.
And maybe you'll find people in 20 years still having the box collection, the box edition from like we have from Falcon 4.
Oh
So
yeah,
that might
yeah.
be why they're asking for it.
I'm sure it will. People love to connect to collect this thing. Again, we lost a lot of cool stuff over the years, right? We have cool things right now, like games are on the cloud, so we don't have to get. We don't even. I don't even have a DVD player in my computer anymore, right? We don't need the physical items. But it was kind of cool. It was really cool to hold those big manuals, and to have all that information in a physical format and have all these boxes. I have seen so many shelves with games from Microprose that people are sharing on our social media. It's really cool, and it gives you this sense of belonging to this I don't club, perhaps, to this community. It helps you get that sense. It's really cool. I love it. I love this. I still have a lot of boxes for old games, including Microprose games, and I like to just hold the boxes and enjoy the art and enjoy the production of those items. It's something very cool. So we understand that it's something that people like because we do like it ourselves, right? It's something that we like ourselves. So that's something that we have talked about. It's something that we would like to eventually do.
While I will not hold you to anything, are there any timelines or any kind of dates or things that we might be able to look forward to?
Not right now. I cannot tell you anything. We do have some timelines internally, but nothing that we can disclose this time. One of the things that we want to do when we give you dates to be 100% sure that we are not missing any dates, at least not missing for a long, by a long shot. So although we have some dates internally, we don't want to just throw them out without being, sure that things are going to happen when we say they are going to happen.
No, I understand completely. But I would have been remiss if I had not tried to ask.
Look, I would love to tell you all the goods all the good things, but yeah, we have to keep some secrets. You guys have to, keep on being curious and asking us now and then.
Oh, we'll keep asking.
I bet you will. I hope you will.
Yeah. Red Kite, did you have something?
I was going to say, I'm glad to hear that you're very excited for what you can't talk about with us, and to keep our ears to the horizon and see what comes up.
Yeah, it's one of the worst parts of what I do. I have some details I don't have, some other details I have. In general, I can tell you that I am extremely excited for what Microprose is going to what Microprose is doing already, and then what they will do. I'm really excited. I think it's going to be a fantastic job. I think it's going to be fantastic. As a gamer, as someone that loved Microprose, and as someone that has been experiencing the game throughout the years and I've seen the technology advance so far, getting someone like David to bring back this brand and understand what motivates David and understand that he's all about making great games and being part. I'm starting to sound like I'm a marketing guy here, but the truth is I'm really excited as a gamer to have someone like David Lagaty to pick up Microprose. I'm really excited and very happy to be able to be part of this experience. Oh, not experience, but to be part of this project beyond this path with.
So, just trying to figure out how to word this. Sorry. I have kind of a personal question for you then. You said you grew up playing the Microprose games, and now you get to work for Microprose. What was that experience like for you? I mean, I would imagine when you saw there was a job or something was offered to you, you jumped on it, and that can be pretty exciting.
Yeah, it was one of those things that you never expect to happen. When I was younger, talking about 20 years ago, even earlier than that, I wanted to work in the gaming industry. But the thing is, I live in Europe. I mean, I'm in Portugal, so it's a country that didn't have any kind of gaming industry or gaming companies or whatnot. If I wanted to do games, I would probably have to actually move to the UK or the US or something like that, which was something that I couldn't do. But I loved games, and I started pursuing my career as a developer, not as a game developer, but as a developer because I wanted to make games and learn how games worked. I do development in a completely different area. I've been doing development for a long time, for over 20 years, and also working with communities since then for other games, etc. And back then, I never thought that I would even speak to someone from Microprose, let alone actually work for the company. And after the company shut down, that's a dream that just vanishes, right? There's no more Microprose, or Microprose disappeared. When I heard that Microprose was back, David Lagaty was bringing it back, and that things were happening in the background, and I managed to actually talk to David and get a job at Microprose, it was a very weird, almost like a dream feeling. It's I almost had to pinch myself to to actually realize that I was not dreaming. For a gamer from back then, it's just unbelievable. Yeah, it's incredible.
That sounds awesome. Well, I'm really glad that worked out for you, and I'm very thankful for you to come on here and talk to us about what Microprose has, future and current. And unless anybody else has anything else to ask, I think we can wrap it up there. Nobody. It's like asking questions at the end of a meeting at my work.
I think they just fell asleep from listening to me.
Not at all. Not at all. All right. Well, Sergio, thank you again for coming on here. We do really appreciate it, and it was a pleasure and an honor. And we look forward to maybe another one of these in the future when you guys have some more titles to announce or more information on titles that are coming out.
Yeah, sure. Thank you very much for having me. Thank you guys for listening to me, for all questions, and for the patience for the questions that I could not answer. I would love to return someday when we have something else to talk about. And I hope, that you guys will enjoy the experience of playing Microprose's games as much as we will certainly have by making them for you.
I'm sure we will. And again, thank you. And we'll definitely get you back on here in the future.
Awesome. Thank you very much, guys.
All right, everybody. Thank you guys for listening to another episode of the Air Combat Sim podcast. And we'll catch you guys next time. See ya.
Thanks for listening to Air Combat Sim. Don't forget to subscribe or tell a friend about it. You have a question, idea for an episode, or a special guest you'd like us to invite? Feel free to reach out on Facebook, Discord, or via email. Air Combat Sim was brought to you by BVR Productions.